All right, first rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be chasing the after in parentheses draft waivers dragon number one. I did do a after waivers yesterday. That would be like prior or after your drafts prior to week one. But it was just me prattling off a whole bunch of numbers on like hypothetical snap shares, the volatility between certain guys, like stuff that I would be interested in, not stuff that I think other people would be interested in, and I was not enjoying doing it in the first place, which means like I just was not going to be for public consumption in the first place. But I did say that I was going to get like an after waivers week one done, and wasn't going to do it because if I don't feel like it, I'm just not going to do it. That's just how it goes sometimes. But I did say I was going to do it, and unlike the end of last season where I ghosted everybody, I was like, hey, I can sit down and I can figure something out because I was looking at the guys that made it through my high school league draft. And they had a lot of guys left that made it through. Like that's a 12-man league. I think it's like 5 bench spots, like your basic regular one flex type one quarterback league. Not a lot of guys made through. It got pretty slim pickings, I would say, after about like the 10th or 11th round of that draft, something like that. There wasn't a lot left. Uh, but I was not surprised that like everybody's getting so good at rankings and hunting down like this year's Puka or James Robinson, stuff like that, that like those guys don't exist. So that's some of the stuff I want to talk about is guys that I don't think should be rostered to start the season and guys that I do think should be rostered to start the season. Um, if you're looking at the bottom of your bench and everybody likes their draft, pretty much like going into this season, like wouldn't give anything up for like uh, all the money in the world, whatever it costs. At this point, I would say that like if you're looking at a guy and you're being honest with yourself, and it's a guy, a running back with a hard road to be an RB2 or a wide receiver 3 type guy that has a hard road to be like a wide receiver 2, those guys probably shouldn't be on your roster. Let's be honest. At this point, it's guys that I don't want to be knife fighting for week one. Those are the guys I want to prioritize being on the bottom of my bench and not on someone else's roster. When what we think is going to happen happens, and again, that would be the issue. Is what do we think is going to happen week one? Are those guys going to confirm it? There are certain guys that like should be in our lineup week one, like Ibuka at this point, like absolutely should be in everybody's like. Hopefully, you went out and got your league winner, and that guy should be in your lineup at this point, regardless of the price that you put on him. Pretty much who else is available. So those are some of the things that are going on, and then I do have let's see, talking about this stuff. Like, I'm not looking for this year's Bucky Irving or this year's Brock Bowers because those are last year's metrics. I probably want to find the new metrics, the stuff that's different this year, and go hunt those guys down. I do have that written down. And the other thing, as I was getting the after waivers template done for this season, I did see that there are some very odd active roster configurations for teams because they figured out how to use their practice squads, which means that they are protecting the guys on their active roster that they want to protect, and they are exposing the guys on their practice squad because those guys on the practice squad are going to be active. They just are not protected. Guys can turn down active contracts to stay on team's practice squad. But if you're on some team's active roster, doesn't mean you're ever going to play this year. You're just protected. So like teams are gaming the system. This is what we can kind of be talking about doing from a game theory perspective in fantasy football is using the rules against everybody else because that's what we're trying to do is win our league in this case. So moving on, like probably not the time of the year to be stashing defenses and juggling your defenses if you're going to be streaming. But if you're thinking ahead, like the team that we're kind of guessing at this point, we're projecting to be the one team that we want to be taking advantage of when it comes to our defenses, it's going to be the Saints. So like hopefully the Arizona Cardinals are not available in anybody's league. They should be rolled week one, and then you can see like San Francisco next. They may or may not have been drafted. I don't know in your league. Seattle definitely like probably is has been picked up in a lot of leagues. Like they should be one of the ones that like is a weekly role at this point, and then you can start getting an idea. Buffalo, the Giants, the Pats, the Bears, on and on and on, and then trying to stay ahead of that one. So like, if you're in a deep enough league, almost like my high school league, where the bottom of your benches are just really ugly and there's no one available on your wire that you should be stashing, like yeah, staying ahead on the Saints defense right now may not be a bad idea. Again, like what's a win worth, and then you start stacking wins, and then you get in your playoffs, and then we can worry about winning early at that point when it comes down to that. Now, I did talk about like roster configurations for teams and how they're a little interesting. I'm going to talk about a few guys that are probably not totally fantasy relevant, but knowing who the guys are ahead of time allows me to jump the line before. Guys are out there on the internet telling you to pick that guy up. That guy will already be in your roster, hopefully, when he spikes, because we already know who these guards ahead of time. So in this case, with the Seahawks, they're rolling 2 active tight or fullbacks, which, hey, Robbie Oots, rookie from Alabama, and then Brady Russell is the other one. Like they're protected on their 53. That's a pretty good indication that they're going to be, slobber knocker football going on there when it comes down to that stuff. And that would mean, I don't know if I put him in, but Zach Charbonnet would be on that short list of guys that we're tracking to win leagues, and like either because he's going to be like that ugly RB2, or that league winner because Kenneth Walker goes down, something like that. So that's one of the things I would be talking about with like your ugly trades to start the season. Like you got like a couple days left. If you're in one of those leagues that trades, like taking a couple of the guys on the bottom of your bench that you don't have a very good road to win your leagues, and going after some of those guys that like certain other people in your league may not realize have the value that they do have if they drafted them something like late in your drafts. Like, and if you were doing the right thing and you didn't draft your kickers, and hopefully you didn't draft your defenses, and you're looking at like a full boat and you need to start getting ready with your kickers and your defenses, this is the time to start going like, hey, I will package these 2 guys together. In my main money league, to get an idea of what we're working with here, in my main money league, we may be shipping Stephon Diggs and Travis Etienne to a team that's really running back heavy to try and get Matthew Golden, because that would be one of the guys that we could talk about, like potentially being league winners, and we can predict those guys ahead of time. If we're wrong on those guys, hopefully the price that we paid doesn't really change the outcome of our season. But if we're right on those guys, like league winner, and we can talk about like why we can know those guys going into week 1. Now, some of the news and notes that we have out there, Jawan Jennings, he picked up like $3 million in incentives. So he's going from like 7.5 million to potential like 10.5 million. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, I saw a couple days ago that his agent was out there saying like, well, he may never play another snap again for the 49ers. So like they were able to go out there and fix that. And then they also brought MVS up to their active roster. Not really surprising, because I imagine that like with what Jawan Jennings was doing, like the blue flu and stuff like that in camp, it would not be surprising that he's going to be on some type of snap count. Now, I do think that him getting this cleared up probably lowers my expectations for Ricky Pearsall. Theoretically, even going as high as be a wide receiver 1, I think Ricky Pearsall is probably at this point, at least for the beginning of the season, like more in that wide receiver 2 range. I would still be rolling him week to week if you paid a particular price and you have that hole in your lineup. Now, in my high school league, I got Slick Rick and I got Ibuka, and at this point, like it makes it really easy to go like, well, it's Ibuka's week. But if you're in one of those other leagues where you're deep enough and you got to roll him overall, I can understand that. It wouldn't bother me with Slick Rick outside of if I have other options when it comes down to it. But I still think Slick Rick is going to be in that league winning type of category. Now, other things that we can talk about, equal and opposite reactions. So Gabe Davis got signed to the Bills practice squad, right? And in this case, I think this would potentially take my interest of Josh Palmer and Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakur and just say like, I'm not interested, because they're bringing in Gabe Davis to do something, and there's a redundancy between him and Josh Palmer and Keon Coleman at this point, and they kind of all do the same thing. Now, supposedly, it says right there, torn meniscus. So supposedly, this has to do with the fact he's going to the practice squad so he can heal up, so he can eventually make the active roster. That's what the rumor is going to be with Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is going to do Gabe Davis things, and again, I think there's a redundancy with some of the guys that they have on the roster, so that makes me go like, hey, if I thought I was going to get lucky with Keon Coleman, or I thought I was going to get lucky with Josh Palmer, maybe that roster spot can go someplace else at this point. Now, there are going to be some really odd guys I talk about today. So some of this, like I said, is going to be stuff that you should be paying attention to your roster week 1. Some of this stuff is going to be paying attention to your roster after waivers week 2, something along those lines, or knife fighting in after week 1. Now, in this case with Devin Culp, Cade Otton missed practice today. There may not be a Cade Otton this week, so this is another reason why like Ibuka's out there. I want to make sure he missed practice instead of just being limited today. So I'm not speaking limited. So he's limited today, Cade Otton. So in this case with Devin Culp, he's a 4.47 like small tight end, like a big slot type. Would not be surprising if he pops up someplace as fantasy relevant week 1, especially if Cade Otton's out, because there are vacated targets all around for the Buccaneers at this place between like Godwin and Jalen McMillan. Mike Godwin's or not, yeah, Mike, not Mike Godwin, Mike Mike Evans is likely not going to do like full 100% snaps. It's just not how he runs anymore. I could definitely see that even with Otten, you're going to see a lot of Devin Culp. If there's no Otten, I could see like Devin Culp is going to be basically the wide receiver 3 on that offense this week. So as this is interesting stuff. This is like 7th round draft pick that I camp hype guys, stuff like that from last year to this year, like still on the roster. So this is interesting stuff that I'm paying attention to. Najee Harris does look like he's going to play on Friday in Brazil with the eye. So like I I don't know how much this necessarily is going to change my opinion on Hampton's start season off, but like in general, it's just like news going on. Jaden Reed, he's the one that didn't practice today with that foot. So rolling Golden, if you need Golden and I probably like that 2 range or your flex or something like that, like this would probably move Golden up there again. Vacated opportunities, got to throw the football to somebody. And Jaden Reed being out, like I get to see like double digit targets going to Golden this week. On top of that, Stephon Diggs, so he is going to play week 1. It says no injury designation. He also came out and said like hopefully he's not on snap count. No, so you do you with all that stuff. If you think he's going to be on a snap count, that would probably like move him down a little bit. But overall, like that's the stuff that's coming out. And there's K Dot, and I already talked about him. Now, this is the group of guys that I will talk about, like league winners that we're kind of tracking on at this point. There's a lot of tight ends that I'll kind of talk about them at the end, but if these guys are available, and I'm talking like somehow you are in a less competitive league, and some of these guys are on your waiver wire. Not some of these guys, like you can already tell, like some of these guys are not going to be on your waiver wire. But like if Bill or Ollie Gordon or Sampson or Drake May are on your waiver wire, you should probably make sure they're picked up. Now, Bill here, I imagine that if he is picked up in your league and you don't have him, probably going to get dropped after week 1 if he doesn't do some of the stuff that I think he's going to do. Again, this would be one of those guys like, what am I looking for? I'm expecting the possibility of Bill taking over the backfield in some type of RB2 range by like week 4. So that's what I want to see. I'm not expecting to play him right off the rip. If you're wondering about that, Tony Pollard would be other guys like versus cost that I would probably be putting a couple guys together and going and get with Tony Pollard. So like you do you when if you want to be going after like that running back. In this case, this is because like Spears is going to start the season on IR. There is a possibility that the Texans are going to be one of those offenses that we think are not going to be good, and they may not be bad. And taking advantage of that early, because this may be the cheapest a guy like Tony Pollard is going to be. That's what I'm going to talk about with like most of these guys. Same thing with Ricky Pearsall. I still think because of the price that you paid on, he's got the possibility to be a league winner. So if you could put a couple guys together and go get him. Ollie Gordon, and we're talking about like your Raheem Mostert double-digit touchdowns or Jamal Williams double-digit touchdowns at this point. If he's available on your wire, he got drafted in my high school league. He in my main money league, like I said, he already got picked up after waivers cleared. So he ain't available. I don't think he should be available in anybody's league because what are we expecting? Week 1 with him, we're expecting a certain amount of red zone opportunity going to him, and that means if that occurs, he's going to be an RB2 in that range. We can talk about like league winners, regardless of whatever he gets in the offense. Now, Dylan Sampson has really changed my mind as there's no news on Judkins getting signed with the Browns, and the more I think about this, like I could definitely tell a story why I would want to have Dylan Sampson at the bottom of my bench week 1, and that's because they went out and they drafted Judkins in the 2nd round of the draft. Now, Judkins is more of a thumper. He is like a 4.47 guy or something like that, but he's 220. A particular role within the offense. Now, Dylan Sampson is a converted wide receiver. He has a little bit of specialness to him when I watch him on tape. Now, why I would bring this up with Jerome Ford there is Jerome Ford, obviously at this point, when you spend a 2nd and a 4th round draft pick on 2 running backs, Jerome Ford is not going to be in the future of your franchise. And probably the only reason why Jerome Ford is there is because Judkins didn't get signed because of the situation that's going on with Judkins. Now, what I'm thinking with the Browns is they are envisioning like a 50% snaps between Judkins and Sampson down the line, and with particular roles in the offense. So when you look at like Ramondre and Henderson with the Pats, and we're all expecting that Henderson is going to be on that like list of league winners. I would put Henderson up here. I don't think you're going to get Henderson. If you're going to go after Henderson, they're going to ransom him. I don't think that some of these guys will get ransomed in your medium type competitive leagues. Like some of these guys will probably get ransomed if you're in like more competitive leagues because no one's giving away a Buka probably outside of like third round draft capital or Tet around there in third round draft capital. But I will talk about these guys because I don't know how competitive your leagues are. So with Dylan Sampson, I'm going to be holding him in my high school league. Um, he is available in my 10-man league. I don't have the roster spot. I would rather hold a Bill than Dylan Sampson, but I could definitely see that you're going to get the right type of work. Jerome Ford is not a goal line back. He's not a short or like a short yardage back. That's why they brought in Kareem Hunt a couple of years ago. So maybe Jerome Ford is going to be the dirty work back, i.e., the pass blocker, and maybe like the 2-minute back, something like that. But I could definitely see Dylan Sampson moving up there. And because of Joe Flacco taking over the offense, I think the offense will end up being very unpredictable. And now we can start talking about like uh, the metrics that we learned last year about like certain RB2s are going to be valuable. Well, why are certain RB2s valuable when they aren't necessarily valuable in the past? And that's because we're getting a lot better at predicting who the RB1s are. And if you didn't get some of the RB1s, now your ability to win leagues has to do with, can I get a hold of some of the guys that were not predicted at the beginning of the year, like your RB2s or your cuffs or something like that down the line. So like I am a little bit more interested on if the Judkins situation does not get remedied, and it costs me nothing to find out with Dylan Sampson week 1, and as long as I can ride that that road with Sampson, because Judkins, even if he gets signed, like there's talk he's going to go on the commissioner's exempt list because we don't quite know the story that's going on there. You're talking about like league or union stuff about like how they're going to deal with him. He's not signed yet, and we're on Wednesday. Like the season opens tomorrow. I went and looked it up. Like as far as I know, he's not signed. So now I can start plotting versus cost. What's it cost me to be wrong? If he's the guy at bottom of my bench and I'm getting like the possibility of an RB2 down the line, and it costs me nothing to find out. Like I would not want to be knife fighting for him when I can tell that story after week 1. Matthew Golden, all roads are leading to it's probably going to be him and Tucker Kraft when it comes to league winner, when it comes to the Packers. If we can talk about like getting like an 8 to 10 targeted game guy, yeah, it could happen. So like I would be putting together a couple guys and going out and get him if you can get him off the bottom of your roster. Tet McMillan, it would be another one. I think you're gonna have to spend on Tet, but we could talk about like the where he's going in drafts. Like in your more competitive leagues, he may have been going like your second or third round, like the flop right there. In your less competitive leagues, who knows how low he was going. And if you could put a couple guys together that you're just like, hey, I don't think they're going to do it for me, again, like your Diggs, something like that, like, and you can go out, you get your Tet with the possibility that you're going to have like the bigger upside. And that's what we're kind of looking for at this point in the season. And I'll put Ibuka up there. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him, but I always put him up there. Like we can talk about, these are the guys that we've kind of anointed as league winners going in the season. And finally, like Drake May, if he's sitting at the bottom of your waiver wire, or the top of your waiver wire, I should actually put out, he's available. Yeah, I would rather have him on the bottom of my bench than in someone else's starting lineup if he hits week 1. And I already talked about Bill. Now, some of the other guys that I will talk about real quick, for reasons, I will just say, long and short of it, is Harold Fannon's opportunities week 1, like what he's going to end up doing for the Browns. It's going to be like really interesting when we talk about the possibility of I don't even know if like league winners the right way because there's still Njoku there, but overall what the offense is going to look like, and then all the camp hype that's coming out with Fannin. It's one of those guys that like probably would not be rostering at this point, but he's one of those guys that like I am very curious about week 1. DJ Giddens, because the Colts only kept 3 active running backs. Goodson is going to be more of a receiving work back if they use him in that capacity. So at this point, like I think 5th round draft pick DJ Giddens does look like he is one of those like league winning lottery ticket handcuffs. So if he's available, that's out there. Now, some of these guys, like I said, are not necessarily redraft fantasy guys. We're already tracking the possibility we're gonna get some breakout with Theo Johnson. But when I was looking at all the active rosters, Thomas Fedone, whatever his name is for the Giants, he was one of the guys that was popping up on Twitter at like Camp Hype Guy, making all those like one-handed catches, stuff like that. They kept 4 tight ends. He's the 4th tight end that made the roster for the Giants. Again, those guys that teams are telling you are valuable to them because they're protecting them on the 53. This is one of those guys, and he is a super athletic tight end. So like, not saying it's going to happen, but it's one of those guys where like, hey, I know that guy, and he made the roster. He's a 7th round draft pick, like 4-7 guy. But like at the end of the day, like when we talk about, well, who's going to end up being the number 2 for the Giants, because that might have some value, And is there a possibility it's him? Like, it's one of those ones where I just like to go like, well, now I know who this guy is. And Daniel Bellinger did make the roster too. I don't think Manhurst is going to be anything else or anything special. So that's just like one of the guys that are out there now. Right now, because vacated targets, and we're talking about like Thielen getting traded and then Coker going on IR, they do have Hunter Renfro that they re-signed to be like slot only, like trustworthy security blanket overall. But talking about like some of those guys that we could talk maybe about league winners, like Sanders would be there because we could tell that story week one. Like when we can tell that story and we can predict it ahead of time, those guys have to be up there. Maliki Mataveo, 7th round draft pick for the Saints. So Taysom Hill is on the pup. Foster Moreau is on the pup. Maliki's like a 4'8", 4'9", 40 guy, but he's I saw one place where he's listed as like 6'8", like 275. Anyway, they only kept 2 tight ends, Juwan Johnson, and then Moliki was the other one, which was another one where I'm like, that's very interesting that he would make the roster. I don't know what capacity, because when I went and looked him up, he's not known as a blocking tight end. So it's just one of those ones where I'm like, that's interesting. Now, when I talk about like teams and how their rosters are configured and how teams valued them. So undrafted free agent Raheem Sanders, he was undrafted, got signed by the Chargers. Chargers waived him, and the Browns snatched him up and they signed him to the 53. So that tells me that the Browns think he's somewhat valuable. Now, I did watch him on tape, and he kind of reminds me of. Let me roll down and see who I wrote. Very interesting guy. He's a 4.5 40 guy, like 225. Reminds me of Latavius Murray. Kind of think like Isaiah Pacheco, like just runs angry, but not very good in football. And again, this is one of those things where like we can kind of guess that the Browns backfield, because there's vacated opportunities, are there. And if he's on the active roster, I bet he's going to be active week one with Jerome Ford. And this is one of those guys that as much as I'm saying stash Dylan Sampson, this is one of the guys like the snapshot is going to be interesting. I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant, but the fact that this is part of the reason why I would say like the Browns are not particularly happy with their running backs, and that's not named Dylan Sampson. So this is one of the things that I just like, hey, that's pretty interesting. Javon Baker, he, I guess, asked for his release from the Patriots. He's 4th round draft pick. Asked for the release from the Patriots. He signed to the Eagles practice squad. Now, this is one of the ones like, was it Steve Smith said, makes the easy catches look hard and the hard catches look easy. I do like him. Their backup wide receivers behind Smith and A.J. Brown at this point are Dotson and Mechie. So, like, this is a very interesting wide receiver room, especially with Johnny Wilson going on IR with a knee. And then finally, like, I just got to put it out there, like, yeah, Roman Wilson, like, would not be surprised me in one way, shape, or form. He's a league winner, but I'll just throw him out there. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It doesn't cost me anything at this point. And then I have our good friend, like, Brock Bowers here. Why I don't have all the list of the litany of, like, some of potential league winning quarterbacks and tight ends. And it's because, like, the road for some of these guys to get there is going to be very much relative to what the elite guys do. So, getting, say, a sub-elite tight end, and we're going to talk about, like, say, like a Tucker Kraft or something like that, Jake Ferguson, getting one of those guys to jump up into that, like, well, I'm glad I don't have to worry about the tight end position, is not going to be the same thing as if we get, like, a unicorn. So that's why I said the last year's metrics with like league winners when it comes to like your Brock Bowers. Well, Brock Bowers wasn't a unicorn. We're expecting Brock Bowers to be a unicorn this year. And that means your road for league winning tight end is different, because if you spent on one of those mid-range tight ends and he gives you mid-range production, your ability to win league is going to be like, hey, can I get like, say, a Theo Johnson to break out and put up the same points, because I took him off the waiver wire and you spent like a 6th-round pick on a TJ Hawkins, something along those lines. So in this case, like, I think there's a lot of those guys. We can talk about like Kincaid, we can talk about Ferguson, we can talk about Loveland, like those type of things. Ty Warren, if he's the guy. There's so many of them out there that like it's not really worth, or Mason Taylor. It's not really worth me going like, hey, that guy should be stashed at the bottom of your roster, because there's so many of them out there, and I don't know how competitive your league is. Someone went up in my high school league and they snatched Ty Warren away from me way early in the draft. So like I was expecting in that league that's less competitive, and that compete is getting more competitive, that like he went up a lot higher than I was expecting him to. I didn't think they would actually go up and spend on him in those premium ranges, but they did, because that's what Brock Bowers did last year overall to that stuff. And then your quarterback situations, like I think both leagues, Bryce Young is like the only guy. Like Michael Penix got drafted, which is not surprising. not shocking in any way, shape, or form. So anyway, that's what I got right now going into week one tomorrow kickoff. So this is chasing the after parentheses draft waivers dragon number one, and expecting to do some way, shape, or form chasing the dragon Monday nights, and then Tuesdays we'll get after waivers, and I don't know if I'm gonna do anything else. So like I'm lazy. Sue me on that one, and yeah, see you when I see you.